Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's the Brandon for you guys today, and welcome to the channel. It's been a while since you uploaded to the sport channel. We got some videos coming up. We need to talk about the Tigers, we need to talk about Barcelona, we need to talk about FC25. But before we get into any of that, this is a channel, like I said before, where I care a lot about women's sports. So I came across this video. My recommendation is called Women's Sports. That's it, by someone named Vize. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name or not. We're gonna check this out. We're gonna react to it. If I had to guess, I'm probably gonna disagree with this video a lot because I'm pretty sure this guy probably doesn't watch enough women's sports to have an opinion of women's sports. That's just my opinion. You know, generally when it comes to people in the sports sphere, they don't really watch a lot of women's sports. So you know, you got to take everything that they say with a grain of salt. Even when it comes to, like me, as someone who watches more women's sports than any other sport, I could be a little biased, so you know you got to take what I say with a grain of salt because I could be a little biased. So let's get into this. Check out the original video, as I always say on my main channel, the reactions. The original video will also be the first link in the description box below. So always show the original uploader some love. Don't just watch my video and go from there. Always show the original creator some love. Let's get into this reaction.
Women's football. Let's have a talk about it. I've covered a vast array of football topics on this channel. However, women's football is one which I've not really covered. The only time I ever have is really when the Joey Barton thing came up like how many months ago. And ever since then, it's just something that has been growing and growing ever since. And I think it deserves its own video to talk about it. So comment down below your thoughts about women's football, the kind of stigma that it gets. And do you think that it deserves more respect?
Damn, man. We're at that point
Thoughts about women's football,
where
the kind of stigma.
these two are now retired. Alice Morgan's gone. Rapinoe's gone. Rapinoe retired last year, but Morgan retired this year. End of an era when it comes to those two being on the national team.
That it gets, and do you think that it deserves more respect? Tell me down below your thoughts. Like, subscribe, and of course Mazzala Designs. I believe we've only got one woman's print on the site, which of course winner for England v Germany in the Euro final, so that is on the site, so go and check it out. And of course all the other prints as well. Use code VISA for 15% off all items. And women's football, let's get into it. Now, if I said women's football, what do you think? Well, if you're someone from a couple of years ago, you may have immediately gone into the American USA women's national team with the controversy that surrounds that.
Ah, legends. So many legends. Yeah, Shannon Box, Carly Lloyd. She's kind of a weirdo, but you know, in game, yeah, she was an icon. Kelly O'Hara, who's retiring this year, she's actually injured. She put on season ended in IR, so she's like not even playing anymore. She's retiring this year. Got Julie Ertz retired, I think last year. Man, Becky's still playing. But I think she's kind of like pseudo retired. Like she still plays for the national team when they need like an extra. But she's basically retired from the national team. I don't know if she's like done with any of the sale though. She might be like playing like another year or two. She's still done. I think she's probably still playing for like another 2 or 3 years. Solo long gone chick, much like Carly Lloyd. How IRL when it comes to personal life, she's a little weird. You know, domestic violence issues, alcohol. She's an alcoholic a little bit. And she might be different. Might have changed all that now, but she's been arrested a few times for domestic violence. Been accused of some alcoholic behavior. Boy, I actually have the jersey from this year. My Christian Price jersey is this from that year. Man, sorry, I'm just reminiscing.
That where about 10 years ago the US women's national team was by far.
No, you can see a little bit of a Mallory Swanson right there in the background, just a little bit. A young Mallory Swanson. Get 80 French back there as well. Again, Julie Ertz, and you know this entire front line right here: Morgan, Lloyd, O'Hara, Rapinoe, and Ertz retired. Ah. Man.
Far one of the greatest teams in the world, and won time and time again. And controversy that followed after that with a player which unfortunately has probably done more damage to the look of women's football than anyone else. That player in question is of course Megan Rapinoe, which has
Rapinoe. So she is a hot button topic because people have this perception of Rapinoe that's not accurate. The internet makes up shit, and yes, she said some things that gets kind of taken out of context. Like there was one where she made a joke about and again, this was a joke. She her trying to be funny. It wasn't something to be taken serious. She was joking about how she got injured during her retirement year, and she was it was about God and things like that, about making a joke about God having her get injured. People took that super serious and was saying it was taking it as her like basically insulting God and insulting Christianity and things like that. It's like making a freaking joke about herself getting hurt during her last year. Then you have like people who think she hates America because the internet told people that she hates America. She doesn't. She's stated multiple times that she loves America and she loves playing for the team. Like people, here's the thing about Rapinoe. People conflate or mistaken her wanting equal rights as an attack towards everyone else. Equal rights isn't an insult to you. Equal rights isn't an insult to America. If you feel like it's that way, then there's something mentally wrong with you. You know, whether you like it or not, Rapinoe is an icon. Whether you like it or not, Rapinoe is a legend of sports. Whether you like it or not, she is a big reason why the Barclays just got the Barclays and the WSL in Europe just had a new deal where it had a TV rights deal for like $30 million. A lot of that is because of Rapinoe. A lot is because of Alice Moore. A lot is because of U.S. players who push for equal rights, push for equal pay. Will there ever be like an actual equal pay? No, because generally when it comes to pay, it's all about revenue. If you're generating a lot of revenue, you make more money. The WSL is generating more revenue, so the Barclays are like, all right, here's more money. So the more money you generate, the more money people will give to you. But generally, when it comes to Rapinoe, people are just weird when it comes to how they behave to her. If you don't like her, you don't like her. But a lot of y'all behavior towards her is just weird.
Has come out several times, a couple of years back, and even to this day, on about women's salary, women's wages, and getting an equal pay. And the stock.
You know what's funny? I know we're pausing again pretty soon here. But like part of why he made this video is going to be A, the WSL getting that new contract with Barclays, and B, probably going to involve Alicia, who came out and said that she should get equal pay because her and Douglas, they play for the same team, they play the same sport. And again, Alicia said before on social media that I don't even think she actually cares. I think she just she opened her mouth to get attention. That's how people know who she is. A lot of y'all may take this offense because a lot of y'all freaking jerk off to her, but she's a mid player at best, and no one even knew who she was until her TikTok blew up because people thought she was hot. And honestly, I think her comments are just her trying to just get attention to herself. Say, hey, I exist. I want to use this real thing as a poster for y'all to pay me attention, so I can go on my TikTok and keep get my likes up, my views up, and things like that. But I don't think even if she was serious, then that means she doesn't understand how revenue works. Like I said, you get more money when you freaking increase your revenue. Getting contracts, you're getting deals. NBL sales getting more money right now, which means more every new player is going to be getting a better contract clearly for them, because right now NBL sales getting all these new contracts, they get all this influx of money. You increase your revenue, you make more money. That's just how basic business works. It'd be like if I said I deserve to have the same amount of money as Asmongold because we both do the exact same fucking thing. We both play video games on Twitch. So therefore, I should make more money, as much money as Asmongold, who makes it what, $2 million a year. I make like I don't make a lot. Let's go with that. It's not a lot. It's just pocket change. So basically saying like me, who has 40,000 less viewers to Asmongold, who like, oh, I should get paid just as much as he does. Why? I don't bring anything to the table that warrants that money. You have to. It's not just about doing the same job. You have to have an equal amount of money in that pot to give out.
Is for a large majority of just men that watches football. When you think about women's football, a large chunk just thinks about this. They think about Megan Rapinoe and the calls for equal pay, and that is genuinely the first thing people think. Not everyone, but a good chunk of typical match-going male fans. Now, this may come across as weird. Equal pay, that's something that everyone would like, and that seems to be something that everyone will get behind. However, in the context of football, there's a reason why. It's not a case of women being paid less because they're women. It's a simple fact of the market of the sport and what that sport generates in terms of revenue. Therefore, the more money that women's football generates, the more money available to pay the players. End of the day, sport is entertainment, and you get paid dependent on that public demand. And while progress is made, it is still not profitable. And that is something that we'll delve into further on in this video.
When he said it's not profitable, this is a true statement. I don't know how things are now. We have to see like the new numbers, but for the longest time with the games like the WNBA, we have a video on our channel about the WNBA. The WNBA operates at a loss. The NBA loses $10 million a year on the WNBA because it doesn't generate enough money to like be in the positive, essentially. It might be different now because of the whole thing with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. They're probably bringing a whole lot more money into like to it, and then the next contract toss when it comes to like ESPN and NBC and all them, they're probably going to want to pay the NBA even more money for the the rights to show the NBA games. So it will probably increase, but generally, this is basic economics. If you aren't providing enough revenue, you can't increase pay. I can't give you more money if there's not money to give. And some people say, well, the men's team has all of this money, they can just take it from them. It's like, that's not really fair though. Like you have to be a little fair. You can't just be like, well, all the money should be put into the same pot. It's like, no, you need to be able to generate that money so you can make it. Again, use myself as an example. I'm a content creator. I shouldn't make the same amount of money as who's a big creator in space. Let's go Shannon Sharp. We're on a sports channel. I'll use sports. Let's say I should make as much money as Club Shay Shay or Club or freaking Nightcap. Let's go Nightcap. Nightcap's some more sports. I should make as much money as Shannon Sharp and Ocho Cinco on Nightcap, even though they have 1 million subscribers and I have 65. Now that doesn't make sense, right? And again, I'm a very, very pro equal rights, equal pay kind of person, but it has to make logical sense when you do it. You can't just say here equal stuff. Like, no, you have to generate the revenue to get the pay you want.
Huge topic of equal pay has plagued women's football that leads to being the sole thing that most guys that just watch this football, that's the first thing they think about. However, for me, that's a shame, because in the last couple of years, predominantly the last 2-3 years, massive strides has gone towards women's football, and you can see it by the numbers. How do you vote? With your feet. Attendances are through the roof. Last year's FA Cup final at Wembley between United and Tottenham Hotspur, 4-0 win for United in a sold-out Wembley Stadium. The year before that, the very same. Chelsea beat Man United, 77,000 people. Likely regarded as the best women's team in the world right now, the FC Barcelona Femini squad. They had an attendance of over 90,000. They broke the record of the highest attendance for a women's football match between Barcelona Femini and Wolfsburg in the Champions League semi-final at a Nou Camp, 91,000 people. Now, an important thing to remember is that women's football was completely banned over a century ago. For about 50 years, between 1921 and 1970, women were not allowed to even play on a FA-affiliated pitch. They were not even allowed to even play football, basically, in a somewhat professional, semi-pro or amateur level. Many topics are still held to this day in terms of how far could the women's game be if this didn't exist, and you would say it would be a bit further if they weren't literally banned from playing the sport.
It would be a little bit further, but not even just that. As an American, the other teams probably would be a lot better. Because for those who don't know, the America's women's team is the benchmark for women's soccer. Like just how it is, and a lot of that's because of how much money, has been put into women's soccer by the U.S. and in general, how much force there has been to, promote women's soccer. You have Title IX, there's like other like litigation and things like that kind of just forced colleges to actually like care about women's sports and give out scholarships, and there's a lot more investment in it for the U.S. So for a long time, there was this gap between the United States and other nations in women's soccer because of how much investment there was. And then for a little bit, like the last few years, the other nations have kind of caught up, but the U.S. is still at that peak when it comes to being the benchmark, being the poster of women's soccer. But when it comes to like the fact that soccer was banned in Europe for a while, you had to think to yourself that if it wasn't, it wouldn't be such a big gap. Those other nations would probably have a head start over the U.S. because, again, if it was never banned, the U.S. would have been the ones who had that slow start, because most sports in the U.S. that aren't the major sports like baseball, basketball, and American football would have still been, just this massive entity, and you wouldn't start to see women's soccer start to become relevant until maybe the U.S. gets involved in like the world stage, like how I think it was like 1960. I forget what year it was when the U.S. men's team first got into the World Cup. But like you wouldn't start see you wouldn't see women do that until they can compete into an early version of a women's World Cup.
But in England, particularly the Lionesses, it is massively helpful, and a massive change has come from them winning the European Championships at Wembley. That is a massive moment because it also creates a mutual respect towards guys that just goes to the football, and that they can also acknowledge that the women's football has its own place as well. When typically it is seen as a bit of a kind of laughy, jokey, just showing TikToks or Instagram clips about fails in women's football, but yet also laughs at the fails that happens in men's football too, However, I do want to highlight one thing here. I remember well for the last European Championships for the men that England made it all the way to the final, and early on Harry Kane in the presser spoke about that it's been a long time without any sort of success for the England national team, and this was called up upon way too much by other female fans, pundits, players, manager, etc., that they called him out for this, claiming that, well, that's not the case because the women national team won the Euro 2 years prior, which they did. However, it's things like that.
I mean, here's what I'll say in Harry Kane's defense. He's not talking about the women's team. He's talking about the men's team. People take things out of context. He doesn't have to say the men's team, but people will take it out of context. Now, it would help if he said the men's team because then people wouldn't take it out of context. But I don't think he was thinking about the women's team at all. I don't think he was thinking about, trying to take a shot at the women's team at all. People took him out of context, in my opinion. They saw what he said. It was like, hey, wait a minute. Women's team exists. It's like, I don't think Harry Kane made anything, bad by it when it comes to like that comment. I don't think it's just my opinion and how I'm interpreting it. I think it was misinterpreted by everybody else.
I feel like can almost turn men's fans off because it comes across as purposely being a bit pedantic, trying to push a certain narrative here, which it doesn't really belong. Of course, Harry Kane, speaking about the success of the national team, speaks about the national team that he plays in, that he's actually in, which is the men's national team. So highlighting the women's national team in the men's European tournament, I just don't think it's necessary to really highlight that in the interview. Anyone can just understand the context of that quote. So it's things like that I've seen people bring up on social media and get a bit annoyed at. And it's little things like this, almost trying to always compare men's football, women's football, when in reality it should almost be seen as two different entities. And that may sound harsh. However, I think that is the best way and the fairest way to look at women's football and men's football, because if you always compare women's football step by step, each part of the game, to men's football, then you're always going to be comparing every part of it. You're always going to come out looking at women's football and looking at it negatively, because the level is, of course, a big gap, and I don't think that is
not even just that. It's easy to have failed complexion videos when there are so many low tier teams. Like, you have to understand, like, in the grand scheme of things, women's football is in its infancy in the grand scheme of things, and because it's in its infancy, there's so many bad teams, like just so many. And like once you get past like the top 10, let's just referring to like the national teams, you get past the US, you get past Spain, you get past Germany, you get past England, you get past France, you get past Brazil, you get past Japan, South Korea, you get past I had one on my brain that I'm forgetting, and I'm so forgetting this other team. Because they're at Canada. Canada's women's team is also pretty good. There's another one. Did I say Sweden? Because Sweden also has like a very, very, very good team. And you're starting to see the Italian team get a little bit better, but like other than that those 10 teams just named, there's a huge drop off like after those 10 teams. Like Mexico's kind of there, not really. Like there's a huge drop off in terms of talent, like that's kind of why these other teams are just dragging. Like when you think about those teams I just named, the US just drags the Western Hemisphere. The only person who competes with them really is Canada and Brazil. Colombia's getting a little bit better, but like it's such a huge gap. And the same thing goes when it comes to Europe. Spain, there's not really a lot of competition for them outside of freaking Germany and France and England. And that's pretty much it. So they're playing like the other European teams. It's just a cakewalk. It's just an easy game. there's so many. Anything about the club level. If you're not a team in the NWSL or in the WSL or in La Liga F, you're probably playing for a team that's not very good. Even when it comes to like the Italian league, you think about Serie A's women's league. That's even more in its infancy than the actual women's league, women's sports itself. Like that's they're barely a freaking thing. So like there's just the talent drop off is so big after the big leagues, after the big teams, where it's gonna be really easy to find videos of just bad play because there's a lot of bad teams. That's just the facts of life. Like if you had a situation, let's say that they just gave Mexico an NFL team, but told Mexico they can only have Mexican players. There's going to be a lot of bad players, a lot of bad teams because they're not equipped to freaking actually be competing in that sport, right? Because they're still growing. I just watched there's the CONCACAF Women's Cup, and it was a team from Jamaica. It was called like Fraser, and they were going against. I'm trying to remember who it was. Was it Monterey? That who was. Anyways, but they were getting just destroyed. It looked like a JV team was playing as a pro team because that's how big the talent gap is for a lot of these teams. It's all about the talent, and so it's gonna be easy to have these clips and whatnot when the talent drop off is so huge.
Very, controversial thing to say that yes, women's football has its place.
Like looking at this clip, looking at the quality and look at the uniforms, this looks like it's from like a very very like low, not even like USL level freaking team. Like, I'm just being honest. Obviously, it's not even in America. It's just like some legit barely get together scraps. Like this is like, let's use a wrestling analogy. You know how it's the WWE and there's the AEW and whatnot. This looks like the Indies. And this is me. This is like the Indies. It's like they're playing for a hot dog and a handshake. It feels when you watch wrestling. That's kind of like the meme that if you're in the Indies, you don't make a lot of money. You mostly wrestling to eat. Like you're wrestling for a hot dog and a handshake. Like here's some food. Here's a handshake. Thank you for coming out. Like this is what this looks like. This is the Indies of women's soccer.
Because that is just a statistical observation. Because you don't really hear any backlash when people compare to, let's say, male or female sprinters and saying that female sprinters are also the same as men, when statistically that is never the case. There is of course differences, and that's completely fine. I can still watch a woman 100-meter sprint and still find it interesting because it is still the best of the best, the elite, performing against each other. So that is something that I just want to get across. Of course, keep in mind, I'm a father. I've got two young daughters that I'm gonna hopefully try to I'm gonna hope that they'll be football fans. I'll be taking them to Burnley games. My youngest, I'm taking to football almost every single week. She's kicking balls. She understands football. She knows what Burnley is. It makes me very proud. And I hope to see a world that in 15 years' time, when she's 16, 18, that if she does like football, she actually has much more opportunity in the sport. So, of course, from my perspective, the progress with women's football is really good to see. Because, that's just my dream. I love to see my daughter be class at football and be a footballer. That's my personal dream. May not be hers, but she can make that choice when she's older. In terms of the match day experience, it's definitely a different experience compared to typical match days in Football League compared to a women's football match. It's very different atmospheres and it has a different vibe to it altogether. Tickets are definitely much more affordable for the women's football team matches, and typically it's a lot more family friendly. You're much more willing to bring your kids to a women's football match than you would.
You won't really have ultras at a women's football game. When I say ultras, I mean like the hardcore ultras, the ones that are like borderline like toxic and racist and like y'all know what teams we're talking about.
Due to a men's one, but I don't think there's really anything wrong with taking your kids to a men's match either. I guess it depends. Just don't take them.
But I would also say this, it's about like atmosphere in America. At least I don't know how it is other than Barcelona and Man United games, because when it comes to non-American women's games, I only watch Barcelona and I only watch Man United's women's teams. But here in the US, I watch every single NWSL game that airs. I also watch the USL as well. The atmosphere is phenomenal. Like I said, it's not as hostile as a men's game, but it's still very, very good atmosphere. Like players are chanting names and not players, but when the crowd's chanting names, and there's a little bit of like inner community between the players and the crowd. Like you watch a Portland Thorns game, there's a lot of pride between the players and the community themselves and how they interact with each other. Same thing comes like the KC Current and the team in general. Like there's just it's such a vibe, and there's men in those games too. Like I feel like what gets missed in these conversations is men. A lot of men watch women's sports. There's even a statistic that majority of the viewers for the WNBA is men. Most of the viewership for the WNBA is men over the age of 40. And so when it comes to like the NWSL, for example, there's a lot of men in the crowds. There's a lot of like the devoted fans. Like again, Casey Curran, there's this one guy who paints his entire freaking head freaking blue. He has like this orange glitter beard. It's just insane.
Many ultras end or something. There's always a family stand in every single stadium. And you can also say that the women's matches has a much
Speaking of the Portland Thorns,
much more community feel to it, because, and this is at all levels, even at the top clubs in WSL, you know that the fans that goes to the games, that they are a lot more appreciated by the squad, by the staff. So what about stats? Well, at the start of this year, it was announced that women's football generated over 500 million euros. Money is always a huge part of it, and reality of it is that when it comes to more promotion, more eyes on the women's game, they're going to generate more revenue, because in the eyes of the sponsors, in terms of the eyes of the broadcasters, that's all they care about. They care about money. Well, people see this product. If people see the product, then we'll pay you more money so that more people can view the product.
Basics.
It's not really hard to understand, and that is what's happening. The revenues have gone up. The Barcelona Femini team, they've generated 13.4 million euros in revenue, and that is a rise of 74% compared to the previous year. In comparison to, let's say, Man United, they've also brought in 8 million euros of revenue, which is another great.
And you want to know what's going to drop this up even more? Video games. Because there's going to be people who didn't watch women's sports who are going to go play freaking like FC24, FC25, and they're going to see some of those players and be like, all right, I kind of want to go watch a Senegal Wave game, or I want to go watch the Manchester City women's team play, or I want to watch Barcelona play, or I want to watch OL Lyon play. Like, there's going to be people who are like that will also become viewers of the real sport because they played the video game, and now they have a little bit of an investment in those players and want to see them IRL. Other than ones who are just eating their meat to freaking some players that they find attractive. But there'd be like people who legitimately actually do want to watch a sport now because they played the video game, and they experience like that player in their ultimate team, or they play career, whatever.
Rise on the year prior. Real Madrid 7.4 million, a rise of 416%. Man City 5.3 million, and yet another rise. And even teams like PSG, Everton, with a double-digit revenue growth. And why is this? Well, a massive part of it is the rise of women's matches playing at the club's main stadiums, Arsenal, Old Trafford, so on and so forth. The boosted match day revenues is a massive help, and alongside that comes the increased viewership and individual partnerships, sponsors that partners with the women's teams. However, we do need to add this to the context of the greater picture here. There's a men's team and a women's team. And when you're looking at the women's team, despite this increase of revenue, no club in the top 15 of the highest revenue clubs in women's football is profitable. Partnered with this, the wages to revenue ratio is at 106% for the women's team. In comparison to the men's, it is 59%. So what that means is that the women are being paid more in terms of the actual revenue that they generate in with the club. So this means that even still to this day, the women's football teams still receives regular contributions from the associated.
So that kind of just points to what I was saying before about the WNBA. The WNBA operates at a loss for the NBA. The NBA, they own the WNBA. So the NBA, they're losing money every year because the WNBA doesn't generate enough money to pay for itself, essentially. And it's the same thing, like where these teams, they don't generate enough money. And again, they're increasing their like how much money they're bringing in. And with that increase, they'll increase player contracts. But again, it's all about generating revenue. That's just the basics of life and economics. Money is king, and you have to generate revenue to get the salaries that you want.
to men's clubs to help bridge that financial gap. This may not be too much money. On the average, they typically get donated about 1.5 million euro, which in a grand context of football is not too much. The only issue is when it comes to the lower levels, there's a massive gap between the top 15 best teams. So Chelsea, United, Arsenal, Real Madrid, PSG, Wolfsburg, Barcelona, and the rest of the pack. So the lower levels of the kind of, the WSL teams, the West Hams.
Yeah, I know we're pausing again earlier, but think about, like I said before, about like how much there's a big drop off. Think about the fact that with Barcelona, they're basically a fucking national team. That's how good they are. They're basically like a fusion of like some of the best players from around the freaking world, right? But they can afford that, Whereas you think about a team like let's just use Real Sociedad as an example. They likely do not have as much money as Barcelona, but they can't get those players. They just can't. They can't compete with that. There's a lot of teams like once you get past like the top 3, and it's kind of just like IRL. Think about like not IRL. Think about the men's team. You think about La Liga when it comes to the men's team. It's like 4 teams, and then it's like a big drop off. Sometimes every now and then a 5th team competes. In the women's league, it's pretty much the same way, where it's just like there's 3 teams, then a massive drop off, and that talent drop off gets lower and lower and lower the further down the table you go. So yeah, there's gonna be some games out there and some clips out there of some very, very bad games.
Teams in the lower divisions, where Burnley, we've got our own female team as well, and only this year was the first time that the majority of players were actually pro, because before that most women players below the WSL are not even pro and are typically semi-pro, or they're working part-time, so they have a full-time job or part-time job, and they've got kids and trying to balance that with football trainings and playing football the weekends, which is a tough thing to do, and that is at the second tier of women's football as well. So despite the revenue still growing, there's still work to do in terms of the financial sustainability of women's football, where it can be self-maintained. Just to put a stark example here of the total revenue of a football club and the women's team revenue that it brings in as well. Here's the graph here. It has the top 10 clubs in there, and you can see compared to the men's, compared to the women's, how much they're contributing. And that is, when it comes to a football club, the sole main decider. However, how
it's
much
reality
can be done, you can say that it should be a lot more still to come. Will it ever be the level of the men's team? I don't think so. However, in terms of the perspective of a football club, they would rather not lose out on money. So they're still going to contribute, they're still going to push out the game and give it a proper good goal. The main concern is, if it starts stagnating in 5-10 years time, will it reach a glass ceiling? And that is the reality that people will start talking about if that day does come. So when it comes to the women's game, it absolutely has its place. And of course, in recent months with the entire Joey Barton side of it, it's come up time and time and time again, which is a shame. So comment down below your thoughts, and thank you for watching. See ya.
All right, silent video. I will also admit that I was wrong. I did go into this video thinking he's gonna be like, this gonna be like some negative video. I don't know this guy, so I didn't expect. So I will admit that I was wrong about my assumption about what the video was going to be about. It was a good video though. It was mostly him just pointing out that women's sports is growing, particularly women's football is growing, but there's a reality of where that growth can go and how revenue is going to work with it. You have to acknowledge that. You can't just say this has to happen or this will happen, and there has to be a certain amount of increase in the right places for it to work. And again, that's, you have to have more revenue in order for you to increase people's pay. So when you're Alicia, you're saying you deserve to get paid just as much as Diego, your partner. Juventus has to generate more money on the women's side, not the men's side. The women's side of Juventus has to generate more money so you can get paid more. Also, you gotta get better. And I just, again, on a good day, maybe average when it comes to like your actual skill and talent. But hey, keep those TikToks going. Anyways, that's it for me. As always, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll have this, like I said, linked in the description box. You have a rest of your day. Have you enjoyed the music, catch you guys on the next one. I'm out of here. Deuces.